Folks, we have ourselves new human highlight reels to watch out of not only the American League, but the National League here for Major League Baseball. And one man who has taken the league by storm here to begin the 2025 season has been the predominant number 7 hitter there for the Chicago Cubs, and Mr. PCA, Pete Crow-Armstrong. And he has performed not only good, but spectacularly good, that he has now reached an echelon to have many Mets fans, including myself, saying, we really traded away the best center fielder in Major League Baseball, or at least the best in the National League. Everything right now appears that way. Let's get into why exactly that is. And we have to first take a step back a number of years. Let me take you back to the 2021 New York Metropolitan season. No, let me actually take you back a step further than that. Steve Cohen officially becomes owner for the Mets in October of 2020. At the time, there was jubilation across Mets fans, including myself, knowing that the Wolpazian regime no longer finally had direct control of the organization. Steve Cohen was looking to act fast and to be immediate there and to completely change things for the better in Queens as fast as humanly possible. He knew while, yes, he was not going to necessarily win a championship in his first year as owner for this Mets team, he did make a promise of hoping to in fact deliver exactly that in a 3 to 5 year span. So as Steve Cohen went, he went out of his way to hire a lot of young, savvy, more analytically minded people to pair with a veteran in Sandy Alderson in that Mets front office. Initially, the acting GM hire was Jared Porter, and then it ultimately became Zach Scott, who initially interviewed for that GM role there and did not get it and landed on the assistant GM spot instead, coming over from the Boston Red Sox organization as their quote-unquote analytics guru that many have deemed him to be. A month into the offseason where Jared Porter and Zach Scott were working together, Jared was, unfortunately for his sake at least, terminated from his duties as Mets GM as scandals came about, paving the way for Zach Scott to then become the acting GM for this New York Mets team. So as we head into the 2021 season, the Mets were up and down to say the least there. Pitching was inconsistent. Jacob deGrom was absolutely dominant, but it all came down to health with Jake, like anything else. When it came to the offense, key players of Michael Conforto and Jeff McNeil sustained injuries that helped derail their first half of the season, especially paving the way for a really tense, a really frustrating, and a real big question mark as to what the Mets will be doing at the MLB trade deadline, because this was a Mets team that was in dire need of both pitching help and offensive help. And Zach Scott, knowing he was in an acting GM position where there is a bit of uncertainty as to what his future would hold in said organization, he knew that he needed to go out and make a big splash for this team to not only make the fans happy, but of course Steve Cohen happy. And that is what led him to doing the unthinkable, something that a lot of fans thought would not ever happen. But honestly, after acquiring Francisco Lindor that past offseason, what couldn't happen for this Mets team at this point? And the Mets would go out of their way to trade for Francisco Lindor's best buddy there for Team Puerto Rico, and that was Mr. Javi Baez there, going from a shortstop to a second baseman, and what would be a rock-solid starter and swingman type for the Mets over the next couple years from that point on, and Trevor Williams. And in turn, what do the Mets trade? They trade a player that they did not draft under their current regime, but happened under the Wolpons, and Brody Van Wagenen in the first round, and that was, yes, Mr. Pete Crow-Armstrong, center field prospects. Now, as we fast forward a couple years later, Zach Scott has famously said there in a recent podcast interview with my good friends James and Mark at the Mets Podcast that
I liked Pete a lot. I loved the defense, loved the makeup. The question was the bat, and I definitely was biased by coming over from Boston. We weren't high on him in the draft, and so I thought there was a lot of fourth outfielder risk. And I think some of the people internally, even though they drafted him and obviously valued him highly if they used a first-round pick on him, felt similarly. Like there is a risk that he doesn't hit.
And Zach Scott was coming from a Boston Red Sox organization that did not necessarily love PCA in his draft year a year prior. And that did absolutely go in hand with his evaluation with the prospects that he was willing to give up in this blockbuster trade with the Cubs at the time. Now, mind you, Javi Baez was on the final year of his contract, so you're requiring a rental, which was the biggest piece of the deal, and a Trevor Williams who still had multiple years of control, but everything was revolved around Javi Baez and potentially the long-term ability of him staying there in Queens. And as we just did a video on Javi Baez just a couple days ago here on the WardyMLB platform presented by Stark Raving Sports, we got into Javi's resurgence now this season, but obviously it goes back to that 2021 season where he was tremendous for this Mets team. Baez was awesome, batting right around 300 there with it just under 900 OPS or so. He was great, but he didn't return the Mets as he turned down a 4-year, $125 million extension. So what do the Mets give up in turn? It's a top prospect in Pete Crow-Armstrong that at the time and to this day, Zach Scott, felt pretty comfortable giving away because he really didn't think the bat-to-ball skills were going to catch up for PCA. We all knew that he was a premier defensive talent, but there was a natural concern that Zach Scott has noted himself as a fourth outfielder type, that he was not the only one across Major League Baseball that had that rightful concern. Well, fast forward, the 2021 season comes to a close. The Mets do not make postseason baseball, and while Javi Baez was electric with his offensive output, he leaves the Mets, and the Mets find themselves now without a top outfield prospect, without Javi Baez, and now just left with a swingman option in Trevor Williams for the remainder of that deal. For Pete Crow-Armstrong, he now gets a new opportunity and a new stage with the Chicago Cubs team, led by Jed Hoyer there, that's in more of this retool/rebuild, partying ways with their veterans there, not only El Mago, but eventually, obviously, in Chris Bryant, what we would see there in Anthony Rizzo, Wilson Contreras, all the key pieces of that core that led the way for the Chicago Cubs in 2016, out of here, and a snap of a finger, just like that. So now it's destined for the Cubs to focus on the future, the new. Who will be the next stars there in Chicago there and at Wrigley Field? And Pete Crow-Armstrong would get early opportunity to showcase himself for this Cubs team, a much sooner opportunity than what he would have otherwise gone with the Mets, because at the time, Brandon Nimmo was looking fantastic in center field for this team and would blossom even more greatly that we would see in the 2022 season for the Mets, helping them in their 101-win season. For the Chicago Cubs and for Pete Crow-Armstrong, he would have his first taste, 13 games, would have 0 home runs, 3 runs scored, 1 RBI, 2 stolen bags, 0 hits, a 176 on base, and that's that. Minus 30 in the WRC+. That's actually very impressive to do. Even as a 21-year-old, to be 30% over 100% below league average, so like 130% below league, like however you want to call it, it's absurd. And that's how bad PCA was, but it was only 13 games and 19 plate appearances, very limited sample size, and he's 21 years of age. He's got endless opportunity to go ahead and prove himself. Fast forward to the 2024 season for the New York Mets, and this is notable because this is for the first time now Brandon Nimmo is no longer the main center field option for this Mets team. Nimmo has now shifted to left field because the Mets want to try to keep him more healthy as he's now entering his early 30s. And in the case of the outfield, the Mets are now going in a platoon fashion with Tyrone Taylor and Harrison Bader. Now, that would be a platoon that was rock solid for the Mets throughout the course of the 162, but was absolutely, without question, a defensively first-minded outfield. When you look at the Chicago Cubs in 2024, they would give a key opportunity to Pete Crow-Armstrong to try to run away with a center field position. And he would start to do that by showing shades of what you could be excited about. In 123 games and 410 plate appearances, PCA would rip 10 home runs, 46 runs scored, 47 RBIs, 27 stolen bases, at a 237, 286, 384 clip for 87 WRC+, a little below league average, but honestly encouraged for a guy with just under a 3 WAR season per Fangraph. So the offense was still clearly an issue for Pete Crow-Armstrong, but we knew that as long as he got a greater opportunity and more time to blossom as a guy that was entering 2025, his age 23 season, that there was great potential for him to do something special for this Chicago Cubs team. And as we enter 2025, which is where we are today, this is where Pete Crow-Armstrong at the young age of 23 has now made the proper adjustments. And oh boy, are they big. Not only is PCA an elite defender right now, when you look at his baseball savant page, looking absolutely tremendous there from the defense north of 100 there, and the outs above average, sprint speed in the 96th percentile, arm strength and arm value in the 90-plus percentile. One of, if not the best true center fielder in the game today defensively already. So okay, PCA is the guy to turn to right away when you look for the defensive help on the outfield front for center field. But what about offense? What can PCA do offensively? Well, folks, we're currently 38 games into the MLB season at the time of this video coming out, and this is right before the Mets and the Cubs kickstart what's going to be a heated 3-game series in Flushing, Queens, and Pete Crow-Armstrong currently has the same amount of home runs as, yes, Pete Alonso. They both have 9 apiece right now, as not only does PCA have 9 home runs, he has 29 runs scored, 27 RBIs, 12 stolen bags, a 265 average, a 303 on base, and a 537 slug for 33% above league average as a batter, and the 133 WRC plus as weighted runs created plus. For those that don't know, they're per Fangraph. So what does this mean, everybody? Pete Crow-Armstrong is officially that guy, and whether or not he'll be able to sustain this throughout the course of the 162 has yet to be seen. But again, going back to the baseball savant numbers, and the 99th percentile in base running value, 100th percentile in fielding run value, 87th in batting run value, and then you look 67th in XWOBA, 66th in expected batting average, 83rd in expected slugging, 79th in barrel percentage, league average and average exit velocity. This is not a noodle bat. This was the label that so many fans early said, oh, PCA's a bust, he's this, he's that. Guys, he was in his early 20s. You think he's going to come out and absolutely be dynamite right away like Juan Soto? It isn't going to happen for every guy. For PCA, he just needed a little bit of seasoning. And now in a deeper lineup that he's ever been a part of for the Chicago Cubs, he is blossoming where he's been batting mainly there in that 7th spot throughout the course of the season at this point. And while, yes, he is still swinging and missing at an absurd rate right now in the 1 percentile, his bat speed has been about league average. He's been well above league average and sweet spot percentage. And you also look, and again, from the OAA to the arm value, the strength and the sprint speed, this is a true 5-tool talent, everybody. And when you compare and contrast that to the Mets' current center field options, that consists of Tyrone Taylor, who's looked tremendous for the Mets over their past stretch of games on the road trip. He's had a lot of extra base hits. That's been awesome. And Tyrone's not a liability in center whatsoever. He's been great. And that's paired with a defensive dynamo and a sprint speed dynamo, a guy who's just so Jekyll and Hyde in the bat on Jose Siri. But Jose Siri isn't returning the Mets until sometime in June or July, coming back from a fracture that he sustained a number of weeks ago. So the Mets are currently platooning Tyrone Taylor and Jeff McNeil and a little bit of Brandon Nimmo if they really want to go there, and center field. So the Mets have a platoon going right now for a second consecutive season in center, where Pete Crow-Armstrong is everything and then some for this Chicago Cubs team. And what he did so differently with his bat approach adjustment, I can't emphasize this enough, and I want to shout out here Lance Brzezowski, who does a great job there for MLB Wide Coverage, as well as a contributor with our awesome friends at Stark Raving Sports. And as you guys see here, he breaks down the following. The evolution of Pete Crow-Armstrong's adjustability is kind of wild. Last season, only consistently barreled things in the middle up band of the zone. This season so far, insane vertical coverage, majority of barrels on non-fastballs. So a night and day difference in the offensive approach that you guys see there from the savant approach from left to right. And you're seeing him attack so much more than just in the heart of the zone. He's getting to the breaking balls down and away, down and in. He's getting to those pitches down and away. They're absolutely dotting corners. He's getting over the heart of the plate as well. Pete Crow-Armstrong is not looking like a guy that's overly reliant on getting heaters down the pipe to have success. He's now branching out his game, making proper early adjustments in his career, and thriving in what's been one of the deeper lineups in all Major League Baseball. Currently ranked, the Cubs are second in total offense, only trailing the New York Yankees are in F4 at right around 9.2 to the Yankees at 9.5. So a 0.3 differential, not too shabby for a Craig Counsell-led Chicago Cubs team. And now when you look at this matchup between the Mets and the Cubs, we'll see what transpires there. We'll talk more about it on my platform at WardyMLB, where I cover the Mets every single day to over 33,000 subscribers, should you guys have interest to check out. But when talking about Pete Crow-Armstrong, the question, the answer, did the Mets really trade away a potential top center field option out of all Major League Baseball for, yes, a rental Javi Baez and Trevor Williams? No doubt about it. That's the reality. PCA is not a bust, and even if he cools off greatly this season, it is clear that he's going to do absolute damage at the Major League level for years to come. This is just the start of something special for the Chicago Cubs and their fans, and they have every right in the world to be ecstatic about it. As a Mets fan, I have every right in the world to be sour about it, and looking back and saying what could have been if PCA just stayed in Queens. Thank you guys again for watching. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, and ultimately, how do you think PCA's career is going to project over the next number of years? How do you think his season is going to fare? And between the Mets and the Cubs, which team do you think is going to be the better one in the end in 2025? Let me hear your thoughts down below. Thank you so much again. I'll see you on the next one. Peace out, everybody.